Hey guys, Aaronoticz here. Fairy Tail, even with all its problems, still to this day is one of my favorite and most respected anime of all time. Now I know that's not really a popular opinion within the community, because a lot of anime fans actually consider Fairy Tail to be a bad shonen. And to those people that say that, well, I have something to say to you. You're not exactly wrong with that. Fairy Tail has a lot of issues, whether this be storytelling wise with how Mashima writes his story, the overuse of Nakama powers when explaining a power-up, and even Aspels that just completely takes you out of the experience. All these things are objective truths about the series, but that still won't stop me from holding my gateway anime in high regards. The thing is, I can appreciate both of its flaws and its merits. And while the series has all those problems that I mentioned earlier, it also has characters that I've grown attached to and deeply care about on a personal level. And with the conclusion of the anime series, I think it's only fitting that I do a video on the anime that started it all for me. These are my 10 personal favorite Fairy Tail moments of all time. Okay. Hold up. I know how this makes me look, okay? But please, before you exit the video, just give me a chance to justify myself, alright? Objectively, Natsu vs. Zero is nothing impressive. I can even argue that this fight, and even the arc that this fight takes place in, is one of Fairy Tail's weakest arcs. Zero is not a compelling villain, nor does he add depth or any interesting nuance to the villain role. However, I do have a much more personal attachment to this fight, and is the reason why I've placed it at my top 10. So picture this scenario, okay? A young kid in his 3rd or 4th grade comes home after a long day of school, exhausted after having walked an incredibly ridiculous distance from school to his home. He opens the TV, his only form of entertainment at the time, and stumbles upon the channel Animax. In this channel, a certain show is being played. One where a pink-haired human is being sucked into a black hole of some sort, while his life is flashing before his eyes and he's remembering the happy moments he spent with his father, a literal dragon. He then uses this as motivation to escape the black hole that he was completely sucked into, all the while punching the guy responsible for it in the face using golden flames and completely incapacitating him. That impressionable young kid was me, and this scene was my literal introduction to the series. I still remember all of the emotions that I felt while watching that moment take place. A combination of wonder, excitement, hype, and confusion, all at the same time. I wanted to know how this pink-haired person can envelop his hands with fire and punch people with it, why this human has a literal dragon for a father. This moment, this fight, literally changed my life and introduced me to a whole new world I never knew existed. So yes, while objectively the moment itself is not really anything impressive, nostalgia in the fact that it was my literal introduction to the series, I know I've said literally 3 times now, all helps transform this objectively unimpressive moment into one of the best moments of the series in my eyes.
His lost magic gives him the power of a dragon, and in turn the power to defeat one. This boy is a true dragon slayer.
I cannot properly convey in this video the level of hype I felt when I first witnessed this moment in the anime. So I'll just show you this and hopefully it can make my point across. This moment literally comes out of nowhere. 1 minute Natsu's sparring with Max and the next he's dishing out a roar that honest to God looks like he can level literal mountains. The impact as well was handled so well that it was genuinely one of the hypest moments in the show, and it only lasted for like a few seconds. There was also the potential that moment entailed within the show. Who would have known that Natsu eating Laxus's lightning in the previous arc meant unlocking a new and different power-up / transformation for Natsu that he will take with him permanently. Because up until this point, whenever Natsu eats something to power up, it almost always is just a one-time occurrence, like the Golden Flame in the Aaronoticz arc, or the Lacrima in the Tower of Heaven arc, but this one became an actual form that Natsu could tap into whenever he was in a bind. Plus, it was also a cool moment to showcase the 7-year time skip and how much powerful the members that got left behind have gotten. Max, who was mostly canon fodder before the time skip, actually pushed Natsu to the point where he felt like he needed to whip out the form that at the time was his most powerful form. Look, it was an awesome moment and in my opinion, one of the hypest moments this series has to offer.
Lightning Flame Dragon!
The way Mashima handled the relationship between Aquarius and Lucy is just so impressive. Aquarius was her first celestial spirit, and she was passed down from Lucy's deceased mother. Aquarius basically became a somewhat surrogate mother figure for Lucy, and although a lot of their interactions saw the two spatting, there was always a sense of respect and closeness between the two that no other celestial spirit of Lucy ever had. Even though Lucy obviously loves and cares for the well-being of all of her celestial spirit, her relationship with Aquarius was much more intimate than the rest given that she's been there the longest. In all honesty, this moment made me cry. Because we understand how much Aquarius meant to Lucy, how painful it was for her to accept that this person that's been there with her since she was a child, well, she might never get the chance to see her again. What's also great about this moment is that it stuck. Aquarius' sacrifice stuck even towards the end of the series. Even though we are gonna get a future plot point about this in the 100 Year Quest manga, but I digress. Mashima gets a lot of criticisms for not having the balls to make deaths / sacrifices in his series permanent. How he always retcons character deaths or does a lot of fake out deaths that honestly cheapens the experience. And this is pretty accurate. The Alvarez arc was the biggest offender of this, but I'm glad to say that Aquarius' sacrifice wasn't handled this way by Mashima, and he understood how important it was to keep this moment intact. The only reason why this moment isn't higher up on this list is because what she sacrificed for didn't ultimately live up to the actual sacrifice. The Celestial Spirit King appearing was very lackluster and disappointing in my opinion, since he didn't really do much. But all in all, it's still a very powerful and moving moment that at the grand scheme of things actually mattered and, well, made me cry. And a show that can make me feel such strong emotions to the point where it physically affects me is always special.
I'm grateful, though, for every moment we shared.
You can criticize Hiro Mashima all you want, but one thing that he consistently has proven time and time again is that he can write likable characters and compelling character relationships and dynamics. He's really good at it, and is one of the main factors why Fairy Tail feels very familial, and why so many people gravitate towards his work and grow attached to his characters. He's really great at this stuff. I mean, the previous moment that I listed basically proves this, with the way he wrote the relationship between Aquarius and Lucy. And Natsu and his adopted father, Igniel, is no different. Yeah, Igniel's not his real dad. What a surprise. And if you didn't notice already, you either really did not pay attention to the manga / anime at all, or you just don't see skin color. But the thing that makes Igniel and Natsu's relationship so compelling and why this moment is so tragic is because we barely see Natsu and Igniel interacting with one another within the series. Our perception about Igniel as a character is mostly influenced by Natsu's own recollection of him. We only know Igniel through Natsu's own point of view. In essence, we only get to hear about Igniel as a character and not shown that. But we do know that a lot of what makes Natsu Natsu is because of Igniel. And when it finally came time to meet Igniel in person, it felt very rewarding witnessing the similarities that he had with Natsu. And you can really tell where a lot of Natsu's traits come from. And in turn, The loneliness and pain that Natsu struggled with when Ignil vanished all those years ago feels more tangible now that we finally get to meet him and see him in person, as opposed to just hearing about him. But then he dies, as abruptly and as quickly as he came, without even giving Natsu a chance to reunite with him properly. He dies just like that, and it's incredibly, undeniably heartbreaking. It's such a tragic thing to happen to someone that spent all his life trying to deal with the pain of being left behind, and now that he's finally been reunited with the person that he's been longing for so long, he now has to deal with that person leaving him behind once again. Only this time, it's a permanent goodbye. Can you imagine the emotions that a person has to deal with in that situation? Because I can't. And the fact that Natsu is still able to smile and laugh and be himself even after going through that experience is admirable. That, I think, is what really elevates this moment, in my opinion.
Dad, I have so much more to say to you, so don't go!
As a whole, this entire part of the Grand Magic Games arc was the pinnacle of the entire arc. Now, I know that a lot of people might disagree with me and tell me that the actual pinnacle of the arc is this one moment that I will be talking about somewhere later down the line in this video, but because of all the payoffs and resolutions this part exhibited, I just think that this is the definitive pinnacle of the arc, at least for me. This moment saw the payoff of the 7-year time skip. The time skip that saw all of Fairy Tail's strongest wizards suddenly vanish for 7 years, leaving the guild with pretty much its weakest members. And because of this, the guild that was once considered to be the strongest guild in Fiore was now the laughingstock of it. Even after the return of the missing guild members, Fairy Tail's reputation was still damaged. Them entering in the Grand Magic Games was their shot at fixing their horrible reputation. And also, as Natsu so powerfully puts it,
We're doing this for all of them! And we're gonna make sure that everyone here knows the Fairy Tail Guild never gave up, not for an instant! So there's no way I'm gonna give up now!
this entire day saw everything the arc has established and set up prior to be given their due payoff. From Gajeel beating Rogue with future Rogue's powers and obtaining his own mixed elemental form, to Gray finally beating the smug-faced Rufus who embarrassed him at the beginning of the arc, to Urza getting revenge on Minerva for toying and basically torturing Lucy, making her miss the rest of the games, and Laxus proving that he is one of, if not the strongest member of Fairy Tail by being Jura, a member of the 10 Wizard Saints and the guy that was set up to be the strongest competitor in the games, while having to also face Sabretooth member Orga in a triple threat match. When I first saw this, I was blown away at how well this entire thing was handled, and how much care and attention Mashima has put into this arc to make it as great as it became. This is one of those instances that showcases Mashima's skill and talent when it comes to writing, and this arc is among Fairy Tail's best arcs alongside the Tenno Island arc, which is my personal favorite arc of all time from Fairy Tail, and the Edelus arc. To think that the central protagonist who had just showcased something absolutely amazing before wasn't even a part of this final and climactic part in the arc, and it still works just as well, is mind-boggling and showcases that Fairy Tail is more than just about one person. But that's not even the icing on the cake when it comes to this moment. There is still one scene that happens here that I intentionally haven't mentioned yet. The Sting scene and the actual conclusion of the Grand Magic Games. Alright, so let me set the scene. Everybody else has been eliminated. It's just a fully healthy Sting and 5 badly wounded Fairy Tail members. Sting is powered up due to his loss of Lecter to the point where he was even able to take out his own guild's master. And the final stage is set, the pieces are in place. If Sting can beat every single one of these badly wounded Fairy Tail members, then he wins it all. He psychs himself up, readies himself, fully believing he can take them out. Then he looks at them and he instantly sees the resolve in their eyes. Sting begins to falter. He begins to question himself. And then, just like that, he gives up. I love this scene so much because of how powerful and how moving it is. Add to that the amazing score done by legendary composer Yasuhara Takanashi that perfectly complements this scene and gives it that emotional impact fit for the moment. Everything about this whole moment encapsulates everything that makes the series special. Writing that fully enables the characters to shine, giving them strong, emotionally resonant, and moving motivations that makes you gravitate towards these characters, and a masterclass of a score that elevates the emotions that are present within the scene. I also think that this moment is Mashima being self-referential to his own writing. I can't help but think that Sting's inner monologues during this moment about how powerful he's become due to his feelings and whatnot is Mashima making fun of himself and his writing, and him showing that strong feelings won't always be a guaranteed power-up, especially if those feelings come from the wrong place. All of that and more is why Day 5 of the Grand Magic Games is the pinnacle of the Grand Magic Games arc.
I can't do it. I can't beat you.
Gildarts vs. Natsu is a special and nuanced moment within the series. It's an important fight that holds a lot of weight and depth for Natsu and adds to him as a character. Prior to this moment, Natsu had never actually lost in a meaningful fight. He always finds a way to beat his opponents, most of the time by overpowering them and never backing down no matter who they were or how strong they were. This, however, was not the case with this fight. This fight showed Natsu in a completely opposite light. It showed him being vulnerable. Gildarts, who was introduced a couple of episodes ago, was currently being set up to be the definitive strongest member of Fairy Tail. From his introduction alone, it was evident how powerful he was. The city of Magnolia literally spreads open like Moses in the Red Sea just because they don't want him to accidentally destroy the city. This is a guy that a whole city has to literally move out of his way. And then when we finally get to meet him, we instantly understand his very surrogate father-like relationship with Natsu. Gildarts is a great character and was introduced phenomenally in the series. And when the show pitted these two characters against each other, you were bound to get a fight of epic proportions. The perfect stage to showcase just how powerful Natsu actually is by making him take out the strongest member of Fairy Tail. The member that gets the I need to write you off the story because you're too powerful treatment. Keep in mind the circumstances behind this fight. This was an exam to find out who among the Fairy Tail members would get promoted to S-Class rank. And this was the first stage. If Natsu couldn't beat Gildarts, he couldn't move on to the next stage of the exam. So logically speaking, all evidence pointed towards Natsu beating Gildarts, or at least matching up with his strength, right? But the series doesn't take this route. It takes the opposite approach by actually showing just how weak Natsu is in comparison to Gildarts. The first stage of the match saw Natsu pretty much going all out just to move Gildarts, just to move him. And when he actually was able to do it and give Natsu a sense of accomplishment, that's when Gildarts decided to really get serious. Just by releasing the pressure of his magic, this caused Natsu to tremble at his feet, kneel down, and give up. He made Natsu give up. Gildarts made the character that had no limits when it came to never backing down of his opponent and made him experience fear so great it caused him to give up even before trying. And this is with just his magical pressure. He wasn't even 100% due to his encounter with Agnologia that caused him an arm, a leg, and a few internal organs. This fight really showed Natsu's vulnerable side and made him do the impossible. And for that, it's on my list. Now we're finally at this moment. A classic, if I may say so myself. I'm pretty sure if you ask any fairy tale fan out there what is their top 10 moments in fairy tale, this moment will probably be there almost 100% of the time. I guarantee you. It's one of the most recognizable and awesome moments within the series, and rightfully so. This fight is awesome. What more do you want me to say? The way that it was structured, with Natsu and Gajil testing out the twin dragon's strength in the beginning that looked like they were being overpowered, to Natsu basically fucking Gajil over and removing him from the battlefield just to take out the twin dragons on his own. Which in my headcanon, Natsu did so on purpose to humiliate Sting and Rogue in front of the entire kingdom of Fiore. Something that I don't think they ever recovered from at all. At least my perception of them didn't. But the thing that really makes this moment so rewarding is because Sting and Rogue, and pretty much the entirety of Sabretooth in this arc, were smug-faced and arrogant little pricks. And, excuse my French, but they were all massive assholes. Every single one of them. So when this moment happened and Natsu embarrasses these ass dragons, there's just a sense of actual euphoria I got knowing that they finally got their comeuppance. Seriously, watching this arc was frustrating. They kept on bad-mouthing and belittling Natsu in Fairy Tail, and they got roasted by the same wizard that they were belittling and making fun of. Even when they were teaming up and used that unison raid, it still wasn't enough. And there's also the fact that Gajil could have pretty much done the same. So not only were they roasted by Natsu, but it was heavily implied that Gajil could have also single-handedly shoved iron up their asses. That's just poetic writing right there. But even if we don't focus too much on the comeuppance angle, there was also the fact that the fight itself was very emotional. You felt the emotions behind Natsu's actions and even his source of strength. And when that board showed Fairy Tail at first place, it was all the more rewarding, especially seeing that 1 point difference between Fairy Tail and Sabretooth, which was also a payoff to an earlier moment in the arc that also involved Sting and him being an arrogant prick. Dude, this arc was just not for you, man. Combine those things with music as epic as Fairy Tales, and you have yourself one of the best fights in the show. Period.
If you harness your feelings,
Dragon Slayer Secret Art! Slayer Unit! Exploding
This is still to this day the saddest, most emotional moment for me in the show. This moment made me weep like a bitch. Yes, like a little bitch. But I can't help it. It was just that good. Or sad, I guess. So a little bit of context. This happened after the 7-year time skip. The people that disappeared for 7 years were back, and they were all in the midst of acclimating back to their old lives. Lucy was one of those people, obviously, and it wasn't really going for her that well. She finds out that she's 7 years behind on her rent, which is just low, by the way. Come on. She disappears for 7 years, not of her own free choice, and now that she's back, she has to deal with fucking rent? Dude, that's just criminal right there. But this is not even the worst of it. Being basically homeless was the least of Lucy's concern, because she finds out that her father died during the time that she disappeared. And the thing is that Lucy and his dad, Jude, well, they have a really complicated relationship. And they were never really fully able to mend that relationship. Because remember, Jude hired a guild to basically kidnap Lucy and get her back home. And yes, even though they did kind of move past that the last time that they saw each other, it never really felt like their strained relationship had healed. To me, it just felt like, they were kind of just tolerating each other. He's accepted that she's part of Fairy Tail now, and she's accepted that he's always gonna be her father. So what I'm trying to say here is that when Jude died, this was probably his biggest regret. Not spending more time with her daughter and not fixing their relationship. And Lucy, upon hearing about her father's demise, it was evident that she didn't know how to express herself, how to feel. It was probably hard for her to process that thought. And within that moment, she was lost. Now she was homeless. Her father died and she doesn't quite know how to feel about it. Until her landlady grabs her and gives her Jude's last letter. It states in that letter Jude's final words to Lucy about how much she loves her and wishes that she was okay. She also finds out that all this time that she disappeared, her father would send her gifts every year on her birthday without fail. And with that, Lucy understood her feelings perfectly. The feelings that she couldn't express, that she didn't know how to express. That's when she cried. And coincidentally, that's when I also cried like a bitch! This moment was significant for 3 reasons. The first one is that it really gives a better understanding of what the time skip meant for the people that were left behind. Yes, they already handled that pretty well when we got to see the current state of Fairy Tail and its members, but this whole thing just adds more nuance to it. In all honesty, Lucy's father was never really on my mind. I completely forgot about him until the show reminded me of him. I think a big reason why is because Lucy is probably the only member of the guild that has an actual family outside of the guild. A lot of the members of the guild don't really have that luxury. Most of them are orphans or were people that were abandoned. And that is the idea of Fairy Tail, people without families having a chance to be a part of one. So nobody really outside of Lucy ever had to worry about anyone else outside of the guild. And to me, that just makes this whole thing even more tragic. You're family, but no one remembers you, not even the audience. The second significance is just how believable they were able to portray this type of relationship. Something like this, it's not easy to fix. It's complicated and complex. It doesn't just happen overnight. Most of the times it takes a really, really long time for this type of relationship to heal. And there are times where that doesn't happen. Sometimes life is just cruel. You don't know when someone will be gone until it happens, and regret will always come last. And that's exactly what happened here. The third and final significance is, well, this moment just proves that this track from Fairy Tail is the saddest, most emotional music in all of history. Seriously, slap this on any scene and I assure you, someone will be crying. But in all seriousness, this moment is emotional and heartbreaking and also teaches you a lot of valuable life lessons.
My daddy. I love you too.
Gadiel is my favorite character in the series, hands down, 100%. So it shouldn't really be a surprise that I have at least one moment of his in my top 10. And this is it. A lot of what makes this moment such a highlight is Gadiel's character himself, his development and his growth throughout the entirety of the series. Who he was and who he is now is the fundamental aspect that makes this moment so great, because we get to see his journey, his growth. He is a character that throughout each passing arc got a bigger and bigger role in the narrative. At the beginning, he was the guy that attacked the guild and crucified Levi. Then he became the guy trying to atone for his sins and learning to be a part of that same guild he attacked. And now he's gonna be a father with the same person he crucified all those years ago. Yeah, imagine my joy of first learning about that. He has one of the best character arcs in the show. I can even argue the best. And his relationship with Levi was a nice surprise and a great addition for him as a character. They complemented each other perfectly. She helped him become a better person and never gave up on him. Their relationship is among the best and most genuine within the show, and actually the first canonized relationship in all of Fairy Tail, if I'm getting my facts straight. So with enough time to perfectly establish their beautiful relationship and showcase both characters' growth, we get this moment within the Alvarez arc that truly puts it to the test. Gadiel just defeated a member of the 12, but at the expense of being sucked into hell. Levi is doing everything she possibly can to keep that from happening to the love of her life. But sadly, there's nothing she can do to stop it from happening. In order for her not to die alongside Gadiel, Lily has to step in to hold her back while also having to watch his best friend die in front of him. Gadiel, accepting that this is the end for him, confesses his love for Levi. Gadiel, accepting that this is the end for him, confesses his love for Levi and tells her how important she was for him. And if not for her, he would probably still be that selfish, insecure loner who had nothing in his life to live for. He tells her that the only regret he has is that he wasn't able to spend more time with her and have a family with her. This moment resonates with me so much. Everything that we ever saw with Gajil, it was all leading up to this moment. This moment beautifully displayed Gajil's development throughout the entirety of this series. And when he brought up his regrets about not being able to have a family with Levi, that hit me in the gut so much. It made Gajil's death feel real. It dawns on you that this is actually happening, that his journey has finally come to an end. It's a beautiful and powerful moment that sadly gets undercut because it is a fake out death. I'm not saying I'm not happy that he's alive, because I am. I love the fact that he's now gonna be a father to a child with Levi and he's finally gonna achieve his dream with her. All of that is great and I love it. But I'm just not a big fan of how Mashima handled deaths in the final arc of the series, or the lack thereof. But this is still a really powerful and moving moment fit for the number 2 spot on my list.
It's kind of funny. Old Black Steel Gajil. Dreaming about life like a regular guy. I wanted us to be together forever. And losing that future is way scarier than I could have ever imagined.
Now before I say my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions. Aaronoticz is the show's ultimate villain. He was and probably is still the strongest being within this world. I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. And his introduction just does him so much justice and helps build him up to be the biggest and the baddest villain on the show. He first shows up during the end of the Tenro Island arc, after Fairy Tail has successfully defeated Grimoire Heart and are getting ready to pack up their things and leave. He shows up after being heavily set up to be this monstrous of a being that is evil incarnate. Destroying the established peace, Aaronoticz threatens to destroy the island and everyone in it. Now, as you would assume, the Fairy Tail members fight back. They try their best to stop him, and you would think that they would be able to do it. But here's the crazy thing. They don't. They couldn't. Aaronoticz beats every single one of them, even with all of them working together, and destroys the island like he originally intended. That was the biggest WTF moment I've ever experienced as a child. It's like watching the ending to Avengers Infinity War for the first time. Watching that scene play out still to this day is ingrained in my memory. There was absolutely nothing at the time comparable to it that I've experienced. Like, basic logic indicates that the good guy must win against the bad guy, not the bad guy takes everything the good guy has to offer and still wreck them like pansies and kill every single one of them in a fiery explosion strong enough to destroy an entire planet. Obviously, they didn't die only because of a convenient ancient magic that saves everyone. But if not for that, they would have definitely died and there would be no more Fairy Tail. This is the best introduction to a villain that I could think of since, I don't know, Madara from Naruto Shippuden. It just so perfectly establishes Aaronocitz's strength, menace, and terror. And it does such a good job of subverting expectations and adding an incredibly bold twist on the story. This moment was a perfect introduction to the big villain of the entire series, a phenomenal way to end an already amazing arc and a perfect moment to place at my top spot for my 10 best Fairy Tail moments of all time. Now, you might disagree with some of my choices here, but these are my own subjective thoughts. Full disclosure, I wasn't always a big fan of Fairy Tail. There was a point in my life where I kinda looked down on the series just because the people around me were saying so otherwise. Everyone was looking down on Fairy Tail and I was influenced by that. The show that I loved as a kid, suddenly I was talking trash about it without even actually fully comprehending why. And looking back, I feel so disgusted at myself for it. Not because the show is perfect and what they were saying were blatant lies, but because I let myself be influenced by other people's opinions without actually forming my own. It was only when I rewatched the series and I actually stopped being influenced by other people's bias that I once again appreciated Fairy Tail. I realized how much of a sheep I was being back then and I just didn't want to be anymore. The thing is, I appreciate the series for what it is. A story about family and friendship and the value of the bonds that we form with other people. At its core, that's what Fairy Tail has always been about. No matter who you are or what you are, whether you're a dragon or a human, whether you're young or you're old, there will always be something that you can connect to with other people. No matter how different you may seem to other people, there will always be something that unifies us together. And we must always cherish those bonds and friendship that we form with them. Fairy Tail is not a flawless shonen, but it didn't need to be.